Video is not intended for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 7 Kinds of Mischief. Yes, I know it's 7 Kinds of Mischief, and I know I ran the morning roll, but we are not doing spooky and scary shit tonight. So things are going to be a little bit different tonight.
Yeah, you got me fired up this morning.
So we're going to talk about the pros and the cons of this whole predestination idea with Adega. Adega got so fired up. He was like, let's talk about that tonight. And I was like, hell yeah. And he was like, should we? I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
I am going to be on delayed, but I'm going to watch the chat more than I usually do because who knows? There may be something that comes out of the chat that may be profound, philosophical, something that can go along with what we are talking about this evening. I had something planned. You're just going to have to wait till next week for me. And Loki always does his at the last minute, so no sweat off of his back.
Yeah. Usually it's like before we go live, I'm like, what am I going to read tonight?
No, I mean, the idea that you are destined to do certain things or not do certain things has to be one of the biggest cop-outs for legalizing, moralizing, and justifying doing bad things.
Or doing nothing.
Or, well, even still, doing nothing is a bad thing in my mind.
Yeah.
We are creatures of locomotion, creatures of community, creatures that are most fulfilled when they are creating, developing, building whatever field, whether it be music, whether it be actual structures, whether it be communities. To use a philosophy that is proven false over and over and over again as a way to justify the domination of human thought, which is basically what it is. Everything doesn't matter because you are just a cog in a wheel of time that never stops, never changes, and never develops other than what was already set into motion. Then it removes responsibility for effort. And it's one of those philosophies. There's another one that is that's actually a little bit worse. We're not going to talk about this tonight, and it has a lot of prevalence in society. That is more destructive. But this is one that in every single society that has failed has arisen within that society. You look at every single communistic group, they attack several things. One of the biggest ones is the family. They always turn the kids against the parents because the kids are easily manipulated by authoritative figures. Doesn't mean all of them are.
Certain group back in the late 30s, early 40s did that too.
They tend to attack religion. We're going to get into religion. I'm not doing specific religions because this applies to pretty much every religion. So there isn't really any distinction. Do you need to take those? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just waiting. I was waiting till you.
Oh, I'll just keep going. I won't shut up. So
PsycoDwarf 9 with the $10 super chat, predestination and free will.
Wait. Stop before you read that. Say his name right.
PsycoDwarf 9!
There we go.
With a $10 super chat, predestination and free will are like the shoes on your feet. It's hubris to assume both can exist. We just haven't peeked under the flooring of the universe.
There is something that I wanted to get into that is kind of like what you said. We'll get into that eventually, because even if it did exist, there is a reason why the interpretation of and the execution of that philosophy more often than not is wrong, and there is a right way to do it if it exists, which, like I said, in my opinion, everything that I've studied, I don't believe that. There's just too much in the quantum mechanics of the universe, too many studies of different things where the probabilities, the ability to change the types of dimensions where it doesn't make sense. However, even if it did, there is a way to look at the world that would prevent those ideologies from taking hold that would, like I was saying before, destroy the family, destroy freedoms, destroy your own personal self-worth, and destroy the communities. This is in direct opposition to the accomplishments of the Renaissance and the Age of Reason. Most of you, if not all of you, have probably recognized that the mental capacity of modern human, as of the past 20, 30 years, is diminishing at an accelerated rate. The ability to think deeply, to reason multiple dimensions and multiple sides of an argument, and the biggest one, to listen to opposing arguments, truly listen, not just sit there and wait for your turn to yell, but to listen, is greatly diminished. And a lot of it has to deal with, and I'm not saying it's exactly predestination, but the idea that things are out of your control. Be a good little cog in the wheel, and let's keep turning. Don't look outside of your responsibilities. Don't try and reach higher than what you are supposed to be able to.
Don't go beyond your station. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Icarus flew too high and got burned, so don't fly too high. And better yet, don't fly at all. Oh, it reminds me of a story, and I don't know why I came up with this, and I know all of you have heard this. This is universal. I'm just repeating stuff that you already know. Now, one of you may know the truth of this. I always thought it was a comparative story, something that could be true, but it may have actually been true, where a wounded baby eagle chick was put with chickens and grew up with chickens and pecked with chickens and learned to be a chicken. And yet it was meant to fly and was eventually pulled out of the coop and taught to fly. But as long as it was there and no one pulled it out or it never looked up, it did what the chickens did.
And PsycoDwarf 9 with another $5 super chat. I believe before we incarnate, we agree to a class load of events. Free will gets us there. Thank you, PsycoDwarf 9, for that $5 super chat, brother. There was this I can't remember what the name of the book was, but there was a book I read when I was in college that was about a woman that grew up without anyone. She had been
feral children. Yeah. There's been several of them.
Yeah, and it was like from the point where she was like 5 years old. She even had her own language that she talked to herself in. You would think that, well, if nobody's around, she wouldn't have anything to talk to anybody, but she actually had her own language that she invented that was a like radical offshoot of English, that so she could talk to herself because she remembered talking. She just didn't remember anything else. And the concepts of people being around, she was very skittish and, like you said, feral. I think she was 19 when they found her. That's not something that I believe was in that girl's cards. That's just something that happened. That was an event that happened. If you take a human being and you put them in a room and you give them absolutely no interaction with other human beings their entire lives, they are not going to know how to interact with human beings. But if you put that same person in a social environment with other human beings, they will develop and grow completely different than that. It's the nature versus nurture argument.
Right. That one. And the only reason why the nature argument is still fought for, it's the same reason, as an excuse to do things that diminish what humans are. It has been proven over and over and over again, even in multiple species, that we are instinctively communicative or community-based people. There are certain parts of nurture that have to happen, but there's certain parts that we are inherently born with. So to say that it's all or nothing one way or the other is completely wrong. There are those people who come from horrible backgrounds to become good people, and that nurture didn't prove to make another horrible person. But there's like what you said, and there's been other feral, and they've done experiments with primates, which, humans or primates. It's been some of the human experiments, which I've never got into, absolutely horrible that they did this to people. But it proves that humans are meant for something better, and nurture helps it along, but doesn't create that spark in them. So can't do one without the other, in my opinion.
No. And I'm for everyone in chat, that may have been the movie that movie may have been inspired by the book I read. It's right, Poto and Cabenjo. It sounds familiar. Twins who created their own language.
Oh, I brought that up. That was one of our.
They asked about the movie Nell.
Oh no! Well, I remember that movie. Now the feral kids, the real feral kids, are actually in worse shape than Nell. More often than not, they don't wear clothes. They have a hard time learning to sit in chairs. The one that Loki brought up, there's been a few that can try and communicate with language. But they all try in one way or another to better themselves over time. But the damage from, the real young ones sometimes is completely insurmountable. they improve to a certain degree. But they're always diminished because they weren't part of the community, the human community, the isolation. Which, again, that goes with the philosophy of just be your little cog in your little wheel, go home, put on your mask, individualize, instead of community. It's harmful.
Could something like that happening to someone be the will of some higher power directly controlling events in billions of people's lives?
Well, now you're getting into God, and it doesn't matter which religion. The question that a lot of people say, if this was true, then how could there be a God? Why would he allow this to happen? Was there a reason for this? And there's a couple of really good answers for that. The biggest one is, do we understand what the end goal is and what that individual has to learn? Some people learn by reading. Some people learn by hearing. Some people hear by seeing. Some people learn by hard experience. Little children, don't touch that. Don't touch that. Don't touch the fire. They burn. How extensive that education is, pending this is the God philosophy here, pending how difficult or how want the education is for the individual. To assume that we know what that person needs is arrogance on our behalf. And assuming that we know better than God is, again, arrogance on our behalf. That's assuming that, that I'm not pulling a religion. I'm just throwing the argument there.
Yeah, none of this tonight, guys, is about bashing anyone's beliefs or anything like that.
I'm just presenting arguments.
Yeah, the idea of three lizards from outer space deciding what every single being in the universe, what their entire lives are going to be, is what brought this up.
Right.
Do we have free will? Do we have choice? Or are we set and determined in a certain number of events to constantly repeat possibly a same mistake, constantly do the wrong thing, constantly have bad things happen? That's something that I absolutely positively do not believe. I am a very, very big believer in free will.
And that's the thing. Even if going on the predestination path, and I mentioned this to you just a little bit before, even if predestination were there, or if it wasn't, the resulting path that we should take, the way that we should think, the way that we should understand this is that what we do with our choices is everything. Because if it's predestination, and then this is where we're going to start getting into some of those pictures that I showed you. If it's predestination, why would you choose to be miserable? Why would you choose to be weak? If you have that choice and things are set on a specific path, use that choice to be on the better side of the path. And then you're still fulfilling predestination, just you're happier, less trauma, more able to deal with situations, more able to cope and to help others and just be a happier person.
It's a nice excuse, though. It is a nice excuse. Well, I'm miserable and I'm not able to accomplish any of my goals because this is what has been set in front of me, and this is my path that I'm following like a lemming.
Yeah, and we know people like that. And the philosophy leads down the path, since I am so miserable and you're so good and so happy, it's your obligation to bring me out of it. It's your obligation to give me money. It's your obligation to adapt to my will. Otherwise, you're a horrible person.
Hashtag blame Loki.
Right. So therein lies some of the reasons why depending, regardless of what religion, what side of the fence you're on, all of the conclusions logically come to the same. Oh, hey, we got RR here tonight. Hey, welcome, RR.
Greetings, RR.
Yeah.
It's not inconceivable that predestination and free will both coexist. The Greeks believed that character was destiny, and that knowing one's character more else determined what would happen to one.
See, this guy, he thinks like I do half the time. Because I show up in chats where he's at, and he does think a lot like I do. Let's go ahead and get into this. Now, this morning, Loki read a little quote about quantum mechanics. We can get into Schrodinger. We can get into how, I don't know if any of you have known how photons, if you have them set up with a grid, and just the fact that someone observes it makes the photons pass through a filtering grid and form perfect rows on the opposite side, where if no one's observing and you measure it, there is no patterns to it at all, indicating that conscious thought makes order to the universe. But here's another one. You guys probably know this experiment, and this is the reason why it is more important to do things as one would consider moral, as opposed to having the opposite side, looking for derangements, reasons to be angry, to stand on the street dressed in black and wave flags and yell at people and jump on their cars.
Because morality can be subjective. To who is viewing that as moral can be subjective.
That's just wordplay. Some people use that, but in reality, the experimental objective, not subjective, the objective results is something I wanted to get into. And there have been experiments over and over, and you guys can do this at home as well. It's very easy to do. It just takes time, but it's easy to do. It started off here. I'm going to read this for you. It's brief. Some of you can get into it more. This is common knowledge at this point, which some people don't want you to believe. But how thoughts affect water. And that's just one part of things. I can get into nature, how you can affect, and they've found that plants sing to each other, forests sing to each other, and if one of them has been cut down, the other trees will send nutrients to the roots to save what's left of that tree. And it's just amazing. They can actually pick up inaudible sounds. We can't hear them. And you can hear the motorcycle outside. You can hear, or they can hear each other sing in harmony when things are going well. And when insects come in, they will set up a warning call. And they've been able to detect this. So even the plant life, some say they've detected even worlds, all have a way of communicating. Gosh, that guy's loud. That's what happens when you live in Podunk Hillbilly Town. All right, anyway, let me go ahead and read this. This is just water, just one aspect of it. I was getting sidetracked into about everything else. Masaru Emoto discovered that if thoughts and words are directed at water, the water crystals undergo changes depending upon whether the words or thoughts are positive or negative. Positive thoughts lead to changes in water crystals that make some of them look like fractals and snowflakes, while negative thoughts make the water look distorted. Emoto's work has been published in his book, and it's been, I mentioned it once before a while back, What the Bleep? Do you know? Down the Rabbit Hole? Good movie. His work, published in the book Message from Water, it provides evidence. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, getting distracted with the noise outside. It provides evidence that human vibrational energy, thoughts, words, ideas, and music affect the molecular structure of water. And that's the base element of life that a lot of people say. I mean, it's not universal, but it is for Earth. One of the most interesting examples of his was the water from the Fujiwara Dam before and after receiving prayers from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, some of you will know this experiment. Basically, what they had done, or what he had done, and it's been repeated, is that water had impurities. At one point, it was, it wasn't something you really wanted to drink or anything. It had some impurities. And they had formed it into crystals versus when the monk had offered prayers, and they found that the water formed much more perfect and beautiful crystals, as well as with the groups of monks in other experiments, the water was actually purified to a certain degree. Taking that with good thoughts, good intentions, good motives, desires for community and family, the experiment was expanded upon using words like freedom, using music like Mozart as opposed to heavy metal music, having people with love in their hearts as opposed to those with anger. And I don't know if you have that picture, you might want to show it. Just some examples of some of the water crystals that were formed by what people told the water, how they felt around the water, and sometimes even just by putting the label on the water.
You want this one or the one with the jar?
No, this one's fine. And you can see the heavy metal music is kind of a blob. You make me sick. I will kill you. It looks like a disease that you see under a microscope. Adolf Hitler, of course, we know what that is. Mother Teresa starts to form into a crystal. Love and appreciation and thank you are the two most perfect crystals. And that's consistent. If you had a microscope, you can prove that yourself. This always happens. A simple experiment that you could do at home. And again, this is because of the predestination and the conversation that Loki had this morning. Even if that exists, the will and intent of your heart and mind will make your environment better regardless of what you believe. God, predestination, random chaos. Doesn't matter. This is fact. This is provable. This is something you can do at home. An experiment that you can do, and some of you have probably seen this as well. This is common knowledge. I'm not sharing with you anything that most of you don't know.
It's old too. I don't know if you ever heard of me talk about the tale of Muramasa and Masamune.
Yeah.
The two swordsmiths in Japan. They had an argument. Masamune made a sword. Muramasa made a sword. Muramasa stuck his blade into this roaring river. It cut everything. It cut the leaves. It cut the fish. It cut the very water itself. And when Masamune put his blade in the water, everything went around it, even the water. And Muramasa laughed and said, your feeble attempt at make a sword is nothing because my blade destroyed everything. And Masamune said, no, your blade kills indiscriminately without thought. My blade knows when to kill. My blade knows when to cut. Your blade does it indiscriminately.
Right. Right.
Good intentions, bad intentions.
Right. Oftentimes people think, well, how come you're so cursed with bad events always happening to you and others. How come everything always good happens to you? Now, this is a generalization. But oftentimes, more often than not, it depends on the attitude. And as you can see, the attitude also affects the water. Here's a thought. If you have the attitudes that we mentioned, and you have water inside your body, upwards of 80%, what are your thoughts doing to the water within you? Is it making you sick? Is it making you well? Are you resonating with the good in the universe? Are you isolating yourself in pain? And how much of that is your choice? Doesn't solve your problems, but it allows you to go through them with a greater comfort, courage, and sense of community. Now, the experiment that I was mentioning, like I said, anybody could do this. It takes several weeks to do it. They expect to do, if you want to do it really well, a couple months. What you do is you boil some rice, enough to fill several jars. It depends on how complicated you want to make the experiment. Most people do it with just 3 jars. And on the jars, you label one love, the other one hate, and another one ignore. I gave Loki, this is one experiment that someone did who put just a bunch of bad words on it. Stupid, idiot, you're ugly, those type of things. And then the words of what people would consider a strong individual, a role model, courage, strength, compassion, giving, thankfulness, love, appreciation. But the base experiment is just to put love, hate, and one neutral. And you put the rice in these jars, seal them tight, and leave them be. Some people will talk to the jars, like the one that has the hate on it, you would say bad things to it. The one that has love on it, you would say good things to it. The one that has ignore on it, you would ignore. This, what you see here, and you will see on your own if you do it yourself, is after 27 days. The jar on the right, obviously, may not be something you want to eat, but it doesn't have the mold, the discoloration, and you can see on the sides of the jar, it looked like it might have had some other foul things going on. The density of it is diminished. It's putrefying on the bottom, so you can see it liquefied, where on the courage and strength side, you see that the rice still has its general form for the most part. And that's rice. Think of muscle, think of brain tissue, think of family members, think of community members, and what your thoughts do. And now take that example and think of the community that we're in, because we are Pat, thank you. Some say that we're in a war with social justice warriors or people that want to destroy our IP or those type of things. And you think of our IPs, the good ones, where they basically have always taught how to be a hero, how to be successful, how to avoid the cautionary tales in life. And instead, they're trying to feed us with the things that don't make sense, that are degenerate in some cases, that are corrupting in some cases, that are deliberately hurtful in some cases, and they defend them with words of hate. It should be fairly obvious, and I know it is to you guys, what we stand for and why we don't kneel. Because to do otherwise isn't just losing IP, isn't just losing our recreational time. It is losing bits and pieces of your soul. It's losing bits of your health. It's losing bits of your community. There's a reason why the world is in commotion right now, why many countries are having serious issues, like here in the United States. It's because we have a jar that has stupid, idiot, and horrible things running around in it that cannot see that they are doing this to themselves. So even if there is predestination, which jar would you choose? What would you want your body to be like? What would you want to associate with? This morning hit me pretty hard. I knew all this stuff, but sometimes frustration gets me. And I kind of have to shout out that as angry as these insults make us at times, please come around afterwards and realize that's exactly what they want. To stoop to their level. Doesn't mean drop your defenses, doesn't mean don't defend what we have. But it does mean don't eat your own. Don't destroy yourselves over it. The community and the self-worth is everything. It really is.
I got told something a long time ago, and it was really simple. It was if you accidentally walk through a pile of crap, do you turn around and walk over it again and again and again and just keep getting it all over your feet? No. But the idea of this predestined paradox means that you could and say, well, this was how it's meant to be. That's idiotic. That's moronic. That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard in my entire life. There are times where we slip back into bad habits. There are times where we do things that we know we shouldn't do, but we do it anyway. And the idea that, well, I'm just going to not take any responsibility for my actions. I'm not going to take any responsibility for the things I've done. I'm not going to take any responsibility for the things I've said. That is a cheap ass way out of taking responsibility. If you want to be a better person, do everything you can to be a better person. Everyone has problems along the way. There can always be something. It's having the idea of not letting that hold you back and accepting the fact that, you know what, I'm a human being. I make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to do things that I probably shouldn't have done. Taking responsibility for that is more important than putting your head in the sand and acting like you never did anything at all.
Dave Bob said something like that this morning. He said, and I paraphrasing, you guys can go back and read it in the chat when it's visible, that some of his greatest lessons, the things that he learned the most from, were his mistakes.
Yes.
Because he accepted them and grew from them. There was, it reminds me, this is kind of funny. My wife was out with one of her friends. They went to an Amish auction, and she decided to do something nice for me and bought a cherry pie, Amish made. If you guys have ever had Amish food, you know they're pretty good cooks.
Oh yeah.
And she put it in the little Amish girl, my wife bought it. Little girl put it in a zipper bag and gave it to my wife. And then they went on and did their shopping and everything. And then she came home and pulled the pie out, and it was flattened inside the plastic bag. I don't know how, don't know why. The response could have been, I'm not going to eat this. It looks terrible. Nice try, but maybe next time. But instead, I laughed and she laughed and we had mushed pie. There was it reminds me, because this is a true story. I can't remember the names of the people, but they had similar, got a pie. One of the kids was carrying it home out of the car and it fell and hit the sidewalk, and the whole, it was like 3 little kids and the mom and dad, and it hit the sidewalk and there it was. And the kids started crying. The other kids were mad at the little kid for dropping it. They 8 and under. And Dad ran in and grabbed 5 spoons and ate pie off of the sidewalk. And they were all happy. Different circumstances, different potential outcomes. It's just your choice of what you want to do with it. A bad thing had happened, and they smiled through it. We have bad things that happen all the time. How are we going to handle that? That's the point. That's the whole thing. That's why predestination, even if it did exist, what are you going to do about it? Do you want to be miserable? Do you want to do like some of the people that I've seen in the chat? Do you want to sulk, blame others, be defeated, and hope that other people will lead you and feed you? I'm not like that. I'd prefer to be happy, and I prefer to make other people as best as I can.
Agreed. I don't talk a lot about the way I was years ago. Adega knows some of this story. A couple of people in chat might know some of this story. I will freely admit I was a sad excuse for a human being.
I still would have been your friend.
I did things I'm not proud of. I was in a situation I was not proud of. I was around people that fed into doing the things that I'm not proud of. And one day I had a wake-up call. And I sat down that night. I talked to my then wife, who's now my ex-wife, and I said, I can continue on this path, and I know I will either end up dead, I will end up in jail, or I will end up in rehab with absolutely nothing. Or I can decide that this is not how this story is going to be, and I can get away from everyone, from everything, and change my life. And I made a conscious decision to leave everyone I know, everyone I've ever cared about, my family, my friends, my life, and start over elsewhere, hundreds of miles away, so I would not be around that. I had that opportunity. My dad helped me, because I sat down and I explained all this to him. And he said, yeah, I'll help you. You have to have a job when you get there. And I went there beforehand. I found a job, honest work. And then I got there and I didn't have that. And I had to scramble for something else. I had to scramble for an opportunity. And I found one. And for a year, I worked as a prison guard. And then I found something much better. And then I kept finding things better. And I kept trying to better my life. And I went back to college and I got my degree in psychology. And I wanted to help people with the same problem I had at one point and show them there is another way. And eventually that led me here. That led me to talking with Adega. That led me to talking with all of you. That led me to Mornings of Mischief. There are events in my life that happened that led me to here. But I made choices. I made choices to stand up and change. I made choices to use my voice on this platform. I made choices that I could have not made and been in a completely different situation right now. if I had not made those choices. Those choices are mine. I take pride in the fact that instead of being a sheep, instead of following the herd, instead of playing it safe, instead of just not giving a damn, I took an opportunity and a risk to do something to change my life. That to me is not predestined. That is a choice. I made a choice and I followed through with that. I could have made that choice and then backed down. I could have made that choice and then just sat on my laurels, not doing anything to improve my situation. Anybody can do that. But it's your choices that you make and the choices that you follow through with and actually working on being a better person. That is what is important. Those are the important choices. Are you going to follow through, or are you going to let what you think is your lot in life to control you and to make those decisions for you? Are you going to take your life by the balls and decide this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it?
Right? Absolutely. Well, I've said my piece pretty much. You know me. You get me started, I can keep going and going. And we've already been here.
Almost an hour. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in chat. Thank you for listening to me and Adega tonight. I know this is not our normal thing that we do, but it was something that when Adega was like, I really want to talk about this tonight, I was like, hell yeah, I could go another hour and talk about this all over again. So thank you.
You know, normally I would, but you get an hour in the evening. That's about the best I can do on Thursdays. So,
well, thank you so much for being here, Adega. Seriously, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here.
No, this is so fun. I was telling you before we got on, and please don't get into any of this if you follow me on Twitter. I had made a comment on Cameron Pasha's thing. You guys know that I was a doctor, and it had to deal with history and this and that. And there was someone who is, well, this was something that I had done a while ago. This person really had to fight to find this article. It was a news article that contradicted what I said, done back in it was 1917 or what have you, because that's the basis of the history of it, and tried to say that I was wrong. And the thing is, I know that article. I know who paid for that article, and I know why it was put out. And the person never bothered to do the research. It was done by the local doctors who hated to see all the chiropractors graduating from the school in mass numbers and the whole community turning to the chiropractors instead of going to the medical doctors because they were getting well. Things are a little different now because of all the toxins and stuff that we have and the bad food, but it was a tremendous difference. And the article came out in the paper simply out of politics. No different 100 years ago than it is now. And the person went back to find this article, which has no validity at all. And there was some reaction. Some of you know if I decide to get into it, I can really get into it with somebody. But they were attacking my opinion and whether or not I was a doctor. And he decided to get a friend or she or them or whatever it was. So there's two of them, did a couple tweets, got upset because I said, you know what, I'm not going to help you. You're not going to listen anyway. And my choice was to let it go. Don't be angry and come here and hang out with you people because it's a lot better for my personal development. You guys are a lot better for my sense of community than to argue over something that I know is right and that they're not going to listen to.
That's right.
Just move on. Do something better. Set the example.
And good evening, Lady Mist. You know, guys, I have been closing out the show saying be excellent to each other. I'll just say this one last thing. What Adega was just talking about. It is an honorable thing to try and help someone, especially help someone better themselves. They have to decide that is what they want. They have to decide whether they want to better themselves or whether they want to stay in the exact same position they've been in. It's up to them. You can try and convince them. You can try and argue for them. You can try and show them the way. But if they don't want to take that step, that is completely and totally up to them. That step has to come from them. I am a firm believer in helping people and being there for people. But they have to take that step. Just like I did. Just like anybody else who's been in that position has to. They have to decide that is what they want. And if they don't, they don't. And that's on them, not you. You didn't fail. You're not a failure. Well, why couldn't I have helped this person out of this situation? Why couldn't I have done this for that point? It's their choice at the end of the day, not yours, because they have the will to choose and they have to want to. You can't make anyone. So please be excellent to each other. Party on. Party on, dude.
Well, it's like that story I started with the and you guys know the story, and it reminded me of it, that the eagle needed to leave the chickens.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it never would have improved itself. And hello, Lady Mist, and hello, candidate Moira
Kitty,
and everybody else.
and everybody else.
Thank you for being here and listening to me and Loki ramble. But it's true. We didn't present anything that was a lie. We didn't present anything that hasn't been proved. We didn't present anything that isn't worthwhile. It makes a difference. It helps us be happy even in the worst of circumstances. And I choose to be happy instead of angry and miserable.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone, take care. We will be back next Thursday, and we will be on tomorrow morning with Phase 1 of the MCU.
Good stuff there.
The best of the Phase 1 of the MCU. So everybody take care. Have a great night, and we will catch you guys tomorrow morning.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.